Some people don't live life moment to moment. They live it move to move. While others react, they calculate. While others speak, they observe. They are the ones who sit quietly, eyes steady, absorbing everything. Tone, posture, hesitation, insecurity. Not because they're shy, because they're studying. You may think they're listening to your story, but what they're really hearing is your structure, your fears, your desires, your limits. Most people reveal themselves without realizing it, especially when they feel understood, and strategic minds understand something dangerous. The faster someone feels seen, the faster they become predictable. These individuals don't chase control. They construct it slowly, invisibly, patiently. They ask precise questions that seem harmless. They mirror your energy so you feel similarity. They let you talk longer than they do, because whoever talks more exposes more, and whoever exposes more can be predicted. But this is only the surface of how their minds work. What makes them different is not intelligence alone. It's sequence thinking. They don't think about what their words do now. They think about what their words cause later. Every sentence is positioned. Every reaction anticipated. Every outcome rehearsed before it exists. To them, conversations are not exchanges, they're openings, possibilities, pressure points. They rarely state intentions directly, because clarity limits flexibility. Instead, they imply, suggest, hint. Ambiguity keeps doors open, and open doors mean options. Throughout history, people like this have appeared wherever power exists. Courts, negotiations, alliances, rivalries. Not loud conquerors, but quiet arrangers. They don't overpower opponents. They outweight them. They let impulsive people reveal plans too early. They let emotional people expose weaknesses too fast. Then, when the moment arrives, they move once, and it's enough. Because what looks like a single action was actually the final step of a plan built long before anyone else knew a game had begun. But the most unsettling part isn't how they gain influence, it's why they so often succeed. Most people assume honesty. Most people assume others think the way they do. Most people reveal intentions early because they see no reason not to. Strategic minds rely on this. They use selective truth instead of lies. They use silence instead of pressure. They use controlled kindness instead of force. They make others feel safe, important, understood, and safety lowers defenses faster than intimidation ever could. Soon, people start seeking their approval without realizing it. Adjusting themselves, explaining themselves, trying to stay in their favor. And once someone begins adjusting for you, you no longer need to control them. They control themselves. The strange paradox is that minds like these often rise quietly. Society claims to value sincerity, yet rewards precision. It praises virtue, yet follows those who calculate, which raises a question most never stop to ask. Are strategic manipulators rare anomalies? Or are they simply the ones who understood the rules everyone else pretends don't exist? And if that question makes you slightly uneasy, it should. Because the truth is, these minds don't always look threatening. They don't arrive wearing arrogance or cruelty. Often, they appear disciplined, calm/impressive. The kind of people others describe as sharp, composed, or naturally influential. They know how to hold eye contact just long enough, how to pause before answering so their words feel measured, how to agree without submitting and disagree without offending. Every behavior is calibrated, not fake calibrated. There's a difference. Fakeness is obvious. Calculation is invisible. That's why most people never notice when they're dealing with someone like this until long after. Influence has already taken hold. By then, decisions feel like their own idea. Loyalties feel self-chosen. Trust feels earned. And that is the genius of strategic control. When done perfectly, it never feels like control at all. Watch closely and you'll notice a pattern. These individuals rarely rush outcomes. They plant suggestions instead of demands. They let time do persuasion for them. They understand that people defend against pressure, but rarely defend against patience. So they wait. They let doubts grow naturally, let conflicts unfold, let others exhaust themselves emotionally. Then they step in at the precise moment when clarity feels like relief. And because they arrive as the solution, no one questions their role in the problem. It's psychological positioning, placing yourself where people will eventually look for answers, not forcing authority, but becoming the person others instinctively turn to. History, politics, business, even personal relationships. The same pattern repeats. The ones who shape outcomes are often not the loudest voices in the room, but the quietest minds mapping it, which leads to the most unsettling realization of all. People assume manipulation is aggressive, but the most powerful form is gentle, invisible, cooperative. It feels like guidance, not pressure. Like coincidence, not design. Like trust, not influence. And once you understand that, you start seeing it everywhere. In negotiations, friendships, leadership, persuasion, attraction. The world begins to look less like chaos, and more like a chessboard most people don't realize they were standing on. The real question isn't whether Machiavellian minds exist. It's whether you'd recognize one if they were already 10 moves ahead of you, or whether the very act of asking that question means they already predicted you would. And here's where the illusion finally fractures. Because once a person learns to see strategy beneath behavior, innocence disappears from the world. Conversations stop sounding casual. Compliments stop sounding harmless. Even silence begins to feel intentional. That is, the psychological threshold most people instinctively avoid crossing. Not because they cannot understand manipulation, but because they do not want to accept how often it shapes their lives. To recognize it fully would mean admitting how many of their beliefs were planted, how many of their loyalties were engineered, how many of their decisions were quietly steered long before they thought they chose them. So the mind protects itself. It labels influence as coincidence. It calls calculated charm charisma. It calls quiet dominance confidence. Safer words, softer meanings, but the pattern remains unchanged. Those who think 10 steps ahead understand this defense mechanism well. In fact, they rely on it. They know most people do not study motives. They study appearances. So appearances become their instrument. They refine tone, posture, timing, and restraint the way a strategist refines tactics. They don't need to overpower anyone. They only need to be underestimated, because underestimation is permission. It grants access. It lowers scrutiny. It invites disclosure, and disclosure is power. The more someone reveals about their fears, ambitions, insecurities, and desires, the easier they are to predict. The easier they are to guide. The easier they are to place exactly where a long-term plan requires them to be. Not by force, by design. So the question lingers, quiet and unresolved. Are these minds rare anomalies, or simply the natural result of intelligence mixed with patience and a willingness to detach from ordinary morality? And if such thinking is only a skill, not a personality, then how many people could develop it if they chose to observe instead of react, calculate instead of trust, plan instead of hope? Because the unsettling possibility is not that manipulators exist. It's that the difference between them and everyone else may be thinner than anyone wants to admit. And once someone learns to think 10 moves ahead, they rarely go back to thinking only one.